Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. Our next speaker is Oleg Shlyamovych from PSV Game Studio and Clever Solutions. And he will tell you about tips and tricks of mobile ads monetization. Welcome, Oleg.
Hello. My name is Oleg Shlyamovych. I'm CIO and co-founder of PSV Game Studio, HIPAA Kids Games, and Clever Solution. Firstly, I'd like to thank our Polish friends, and more especially the organizers of GIC, for their support for Ukrainian people and Ukrainian IT community. We appreciate it very much. PSV Game Studio is among the world top 5 developers for casual games for kids. We have about 250 apps published in Google Play and Apple App Store with more than 900 million downloads. I hope till the end of the year or in the beginning of the next year we will come to the billion. We have this result for 6 years. We used different mediation platforms, but no one of them didn't satisfy us totally. And 3 years ago, we decided to create our own mediation solution. When we looked at the first benchmarks, it was about 2 years ago, we were impressed by our own results and decided to market it. During the next half an hour, 40 minutes, I will be sharing my ideas about ads monetization. I will include some advice which will hopefully help you not to shoot yourself in the foot while setting up ads monetization into your apps and games and integrated most popular mediation platforms. And then we will try to choose the best mediation. Before we dive in, I'd like to say that there are totally two parts of monetization. It can divide it by two parts, internal part and external part. The internal part of mediation is about placing ads inside your app. What kind of ads will be using? Interstitial or rewarded only? Will be using banners, so it's a game designer responsibility. On the other hand, the external part of ads monetization is about ad networks, eCPM, bidding, waterfalls, price floors. This is a responsibility of ads monetization manager. Of course, in some companies, especially indie, this is the one person. He can be besides a CEO or IT recruiter, but if we are speaking about big companies, these two different roles. But of course they should work in harmony. When one part works not the best way, the whole monetization process is affected and you are losing your revenue. Now let's speak a little about our vocabulary. The first one is eCPM, is estimated revenue per mile of impression, 1,000. It's used for measurement ad networks quality or effectiveness, but it is useless without another extremely important criteria, the match rate. Every time when we want to show an ad inside the app, we send ad requests to ad networks. When ad network finds ad, the network returns it, and we consider such request as matched one. Match rate is calculated as the percentage of found and match request between the total number of requests. So these two criteria can be used to measure effectiveness of ad networks. But they are not very suitable to measure entire ad mediation effectiveness. It's very important not to confuse match rate with display rate. Display rate is the percentage of shown ads impressions between matched requests. Of course, it can never be 100%, but usually it's not Ads Monetization Manager responsibility. It's usually responsibility of your tech department and game designer role. You don't need one special tip. You don't need to try to achieve 100%. It's not about this. Any percentage of this metric is normal if your game design is set up correctly. And actually, as I say, the guy who is responsible for this metric is game designer. Also, I want to add that match rate especially can be totally separated from in every country. So, for example, in United States, for AdMob it can be 100%, almost 100%, but for Syria it will be about 2 or 3%. But let's continue. Multiplication of display and match rate is known as fill rate. Fill rate is the percentage of impression out of total number of requests. In some companies, it's used to measure KPI of Ads Monetization Manager, but it is not very good idea. Otherwise, the best measurement criteria for Ads Monetization Manager and for entire Ads Monetization is ADRPU, average ads daily revenue per active user. It's the main criteria. It shows how much money we receive from a typical user. This is the most important KPI for Ads Monetization Manager. It's very important not to it's very important not to mix it with ADRPU. So it is average daily revenue per paying user. It's not about Ads Monetization, actually. By the way, I recommend to measure churn rate. Churn rate is the percentage of users who leave the game. You should check the churn rate of entire mediation and every ad network. Because in some ad networks, for example, Iron Source, Uplovin, you need to close one ad 3 times to continue playing. This annoys users greatly and affects their attention. Another 2 very important keywords are latency and eCPM decay. Latency is the delay between initializing ad request and the time point when the ad is ready to be shown. So it's not between shown ad and it. You should understand moment when ad is ready to be shown. To avoid the latency problem, I strongly recommend escalating an ad request immediately after the previous one has been shown, and just after initializing SDK, so just after session start. The last but not least is eCPM decay. This is very nasty thing, which means a drop of ad revenue after each ad impression. The reason why ad revenue drops is topic of another big lecture, and we will not spend time on it. However, I'm going to have some speech about it in future. To minimize it, actually, I recommend using mediation with maximum number of active ad networks and limit when it's suitable the number of daily impressions for every single user. Going ahead, there are 4 ways to integrate ads monetization. The first way is using one network. This is the easiest way, but the profit for such integrators is the lowest. Also, you have very big problem with eCPM decay. But for the beginning, for indie developer, it's normal. The second way is creating in-house mediation system, which is the hardest way. This is some kind of reinventing the wheel, but actually our company made this decision 3 years ago, and we don't regret about it. But to start thinking about your own mediation system, I think you have obtain at least 500,000 of daily active users. Using classical mediation platforms significantly increase revenue comparing to one network solution. It also decreases development time compared to in-house mediation. However, you should spend required amount of time setting up waterfalls, including SDK or adapters to the mediation and so on. And the last but not least is programmatic mediation. I think this is the future of mediation, and actually it's projected to eliminate 95, even 99% of the time required for setting up mediation, which you usually need in classical mediation platform. You can spend your time in other way, for example, for increasing your LTVs or upgrading your maybe user acquisition or marketing strategy. Now let's go directly to tips and tricks. Today's tips are not typical because they cross the borderline of ads monetization responsibility. Nevertheless, they are very useful. The first tip is to set up the user age as high as you can. I recommend setting up your audience age as adult or mature in almost all non-kids games and apps. Actually, there are 5 categories of for ads. For ads and also for apps. Adult 21 plus, no filters. Ad category has absolutely no restriction. It includes gambling, alcohol, dating, maybe some sexuality. This category can give us the maximum eCPM and match rate, actually the maximum revenue, but can injure the prude people, leading a possible slight decrease of your app rating. Actually, it's very, very slight and not usual, but it can be. Mature is rating 17 till 20. Rating excludes dating, gambling, and direct sexuality in ads. It still has respectable eCPM, but of course not as high as for adults. It's suitable for all gaming and apps, exclude the child-directed apps and actually child-directed and child-detected apps. Teens, this category has a maturity restriction and excludes violence and rude language. The restriction affects your ads revenue greatly because it restricts more than 40% of the ads. This means that if you have eCPM for adult, for example, $15, if you will set up teen restriction, you will have about $9 or $8 for interstitial. PG and G, they has very strong filters. they are suitable only for kids games and apps, and I recommend them to use only in design for families apps for Google and for kids app for Apple. For maximizing ads revenue, actually, I recommend setting up ads in Google Play and in ad network in the same and maximum possible level. It's very important. If your content rating in Play Store is higher than in your ads, you will probably use your potential profit. On the contrary, if your ad rating is higher than rating of your app, you are at big risk of having up deleted from the market by Google reviewers. The second tip is not to look only at ADRPU. As I said, it is the most important criteria, but on the LTV. What does it mean? This means that aggressive ads monetization strategy is good for hyper-casual and sometimes for casual games. However, it affects retention in games where the play time is rather big, actually with long gameplay, and it decreases retention and in turn revenue. So higher ADRPU on the first day probably not cover the decrease of LTV of 16th day. Getting to the special, my advice is not to overuse interstitials in mid-core and hardcore games, but use them intensely in hyper-casual and any apps where user engagement is about or less than 1 hour. The third tip is connected to the second one and is to A/B test and check how disable playable end cards in every network. Unity, Upload Max, Iron Source, and so on will affect your LTV and churn rate. In the first 2 or 3 days, it of course will decrease your LTV, but you should wait a reasonable amount of time to understand how it will affect the retention. The first tip is to send impression level data to your analytics system. You can use AppsFire, Firebase, Singular, Adjust, or any other analytics as you wish. This will definitely help your UA teams to set up T-ROS ads campaign. Even if you are an indie developer, you can send impression level events to Firebase and then try to run T-ROS campaigns in Google Ads. It's much easier than I'm telling, than it seems. So we are going to the fifth tip is classical ad monetization tip is not to clone several ads placement for one ad format. The best practice is to use only one ad placement for each ad format. In some cases, some developers use several calls for analytics purposes. This is actually a bit silly. It doesn't make any sense because you can use any software for analytics and receive much more data. You will lose your revenue in such kind of integration. For example, if you have 3 rewarded ads, so you have 3 placement, you must probably receive the same ad for each request. Why? Because when we request it in the beginning of the app, the ad network doesn't know what ad will be shown. So this means that if user sees all 3 placement, you will show the same ad 3 times. It definitely limits user experience. Also, the CPM decay for this user will be much higher. You can lose up to 75% of revenue for third impression. But if you use one placement for all rewarded ads, you will receive your ads one after another, and proper mediation algorithm will help you to minimize eCPM decay. Of course, eCPM decay will present. eCPM decay, unfortunately, present is everywhere. Every impression is cheaper than the previous one, but in this case, the eCPM decay will be much lower. So we are going to the sixth tip. Sixth tip is on borderline, is about cross-promotion. So use cross-promotion wisely to limit mediation platform. As you probably know, almost all mediators have their own affiliated ad networks, and all except Google have some affiliated publishers. The problem is that when we cannot understand how fair every auction is. But we can definitely notice that share of impressions for AdMob, ironSource, and Uploading Network is maximized when affiliated mediations are being used. So, in this case, I strongly recommend using cross-promotion to limit ad network's possibility. Ad network's possibility to have your impression for next to nothing with 1 cent eCPM. For example, several years ago, when we had used AdMob mediation, we started using in-house campaigns in AdMob. We set up cross-promotion for 15 cents for a banner, $1 for interstitial, and 1.2 for rewarded video. This had a slight decrease of LTV of our game for 1.3%, but from other hand increased installed for 7.6%. So in the first month we saw a 5% revenue increase, even for such a very primitive setup. In Clever solution we use much more effective method. Firstly, we estimated IPM, impressions per mile, installs per mile of impressions. Almost install per mile of impression. Then we multiplicate it on LTV and obtain eCPM bid. For example, we have two games. One is the shop game, another is the hospital game. The shop game has United States LTV 33 cents. The hospital game has United States LTV 30 cents. Also, we have two creatives. The shop ad video 24 seconds, and we measured 32.9 IPM. This means we showed 10,000 of impressions and obtained 389 installs. In hospital video, we obtained 44.1 IPM for 90-second video. So hospital video performs best. But I'm speaking about other thing. I'm speaking that we can calculate. eCPM for shop created is 11.39, and for hospital creative is $13.23. So this means that if we have bids less than 11.39 for cross promotion for shop game and 13.23 for hospital game, we can place bid for our creatives for United States waterfall in order to limit them. This means that if we receive the ad network's price less than $13.23, we should show our own hospital cross promotion ad inside the shop game. So we will not show an ad network ad, we will show our cross promotion. So going next tip is about offer walls. Actually, you should offer walls wisely when it's possible, and of course when it's suitable. Offer walls are powerful monetization tool, but you should use them wisely. They will bring you nothing in hyper casual or on most classical match 3. However, it makes sense if economy of the game as a whole is oriented towards in-app purchase, especially if your in-app revenue stream exceeds 30%. This is particularly good for non-paying users who prefer to watch rewarded ads. Actually, it can increase AD RPU up to 15-20% for non-paying users. The 8th tip is about waterfalls. You should keep them updated. If you are thinking that you can set up waterfall once and your job is done, you are making a big mistake. Don't forget to update your waterfalls in weekly basis, especially for top performing tiers and geos. It's essential. One moment. It is essential to check and update your waterfalls in 2-3 days after starting any new large-scale user acquisition campaign. The 9th advice: don't forget to receive user concern. When I speak about user concern, I mean user concern to show them personalized ads. User concern is a critical tip for ads revenue increase. It allows us to show personalized ads for users in Europe and United States. It also means that if you integrate any classical mediation solution and don't set up your user consent dialog, you are at risk of huge penalties according to EU and US regulation. If I remember now, the EU regulators charge 15 euros per any user worldwide installed your app. So it's huge amount of money. In any case, it's much better to show user consent dialog rather than not to show it. The sub-tip is to hide and complicate user options to disable personalized ads. You can find our dialog in our sample. And when we integrated such type of dialog, we got 97% of user agreement for showing them personalized ads. And the last but not least tip is for increasing ad revenue is not to forget about app ads.txt. You should place it on site, and just this single action will increase your revenue. We were surprised by the fact that some of developers forget to submit app ads.txt on their website or forget to keep them updated. Actually, in this case, developers loses money because of it. You should keep this in mind. On next slide, you can see the sample. It's the same app in same mediation before and after app ads.txt integration. So you can see increase of revenue here. Now let's come to the last part of my speech, is about how can we make the right choice in mediation. Actually, we should understand what are the most important criteria for choosing. Actually, the most important criteria is profitability. Another two very important criteria are simplicity of integration and setting up, and tech stack. The best way to understand profitability is A/B test of mediations. I will return to this bit later. Regarding simplicity of integration, we should understand at first how easy it is to integrate SDK. Second, do you need to integrate adapters for each ad network? How difficult it is to set up a waterfall? Do you need to create and manage an account for each ad network? Of course, in this part we should remember about the support effectiveness and response time. Actually, it is the pain of some mediation platforms. In any case, favorites here are programmatic solution. Regarding tech stack, we need to understand the first one, ANR and crash rates, and second is granular reporting possibility. It's about impression level data. Let's take a close look at each mediation solution. As we have limited time, I will describe just key advantages and disadvantages of every solution. All classical solution has same main advantage. No direct commissions. Also, AdMob has a good cross-promotion system. And of course, the biggest demand. Mac's main advantage is tech stack. Iron Source has now more friendly interface and some kind of integrated BI. Now let me say some words about the disadvantages. The AdMob has extremely poor support. About another disadvantage of AdMob, as I said, if you're using AdMob mediation, you will AdMob network will receive 70% of ad impressions, and share of voice in revenue of AdMob will be up to 70%. Iron Source has worse tech stack, and also it affiliated with Iron Source ad network and Iron Source publishing company. Max has limited opportunity for apps with less than 10K DAU. Also, as I said, all mediators are affiliated with relevant ad networks. Max is affiliated with Uplovin, of course. After M&A between Unity and Iron Source, I think we should forget about the Unity mediation. Now, let's look closer to programmatical ones. The programmatical mediation platforms are Clever Solutions and UpperDeal. The advantages. They have one SDK for all ad networks. They are extremely easy to integrate and to use. You don't need to set up waterfalls, but in UpperDeal you can do it if you can. I don't understand why, but you can. Actually, they both have a responsible support, and they both has free cross-promotion options, but they have the common disadvantage: they both charge commission. UpperDeal has the best interface, in my humble opinion. The biggest question for UpperDeal is stability. Crash rate is not very low. Also, it's affiliated with UpperDeal bid machine. The last platform is our platform is Clever Solution. Our key advantage, we are only one independent platform. We don't have any affiliated ad network. Also, we have free intellectual cross-promotion. As for our disadvantages now, I should accept that interface and customization are our weak points, but we are working on their improvement. Now, actually, you can choose what kind of solution you should use, manual or automatic. Just like in a car, you can do some special trips using manual gears, but automatic shift is preferable for me anyway. In any case, choosing classical mediation system if your DAU is less than 5K means wasting lots of time without any significant uplift. Most mediators have affiliated ad networks, so they will have a conflict of interest. As I said before, the publisher and developer want to maximize its ad revenue, but affiliated ad network wants to win the auction with the minimum bid, and then use this cheap impression for advertising affiliated publishing studio. So, which one mediation is better? How you should choose the proper mediation platform? There is no right answer. The only correct answer, you should A/B test them. How you should do this? The best way is to test them in the same time, in the same app. So the best practice is to use stage rollout in Google Play, so you can roll out your new experimental release on 50% of your traffic, and then wait for about a week or two. I recommend to use an app with the DAU more than 2,000 users. It significantly decreases the testing time. Of course, you should compare not eCPMs, as I said before, but eDRPU. If you don't trust any new mediation platform, then you can run your A/B test not on your top performing app, so you can run it on average app, or assign a small percentage of traffic for a new platform. In this case, you should measure ADRPU. In case of 50 by 50% test, we can wait 2 weeks and just compare the revenue of old mediation and new one. It's the easiest and the most fair way. However, in this sample, you can see the test result of classical A/B test. So one app was rolled out in one and in another mediations. And you can see that you got plus 22% uplift for the revenue and eCPM. So my recommendation is to use the independent programmatic platform with a hybrid mediation model. Such platforms work much better than other solutions due to machine learning, smart segmentation, and the big data, finding the best price offer for each impression. So use these tips and tricks, A/B test, and enjoy the cash flow. I'm ready for the questions. Thank you very much. So, do you have any questions? Okay. Yes. Actually, after the speech, I will be about 1 or 2 hours near our booth, so I can have a person-to-person discussion with everybody who is interested. But yes.
how to identify and combat fraud?
Now we are speaking not from user acquisition side. We are speaking about monetization side. It's your app. You don't have fraud. All your installs are real. If some kind of robots are using your apps, it is not your problem. From other side, using app ads.txt is the thing where your teams understand that you are a real developer. And this is the best way. It was standard beginning, I think, 2019. And from this time, it decreased the fraud rate in top ad networks up to 3 times. Yes, I think that's all. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Actually, I would like to thank once more the organizers and entire Poland for its hospitality. Thank you very much.